Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Bonnie Liotta, a transformational speaker, Amazon number one best-selling author, and co-founder of Creating Champions for Life. Alongside her husband, Thomas, Bonnie has worked with more than 300 families whose children were labeled with ADHD, ODD, and DMDD, helping them achieve a remarkable 90% behavioral transformation success rate through a relationship centered approach focused on healing rather than punishment. Today, Bonnie is helping parents rethink everything they believe about behavior, labels, and what it truly means to raise champion. Bonnie, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I love inspiring people with the truth.
It's a pleasure to have you, actually. So, yes, Bonnie, can you take us back to when you were much more younger, basically? So, growing up, what shaped your desire to help children?
That's a great question. I grew up in a house with a young mother, and there was a lot of yelling, I was always in trouble. My mom would say things to me like, "Why does everybody tell me I'm going to have trouble with you when you're older?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm 6. I don't know how the world works." And so I grew up feeling really unworthy. I never did well in school like my brother did. So when I was a teenager, I did a lot of stupid things. I was the typical teenage rebellion. And my mother, when she heard the term oppositional defiant disorder, said, "You were oppositional defiant disorder when you were a kid," although it didn't exist back in the 70s. It didn't actually have a label till 1980. So when I was 21 years old, without a high school diploma, I was forced to reach out of the box, so to speak. I answered an ad in the paper and ended up selling Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door. And I love that because it trained me. It taught me what goals were. That was the first time I ever heard the word goal. And it taught me that, I could be a somebody. And I was introduced to a book called Think and Grow Rich. And this was back in 1994. And when I was halfway through reading Think and Grow Rich, I thought if I had known this magic success formula when I was a child, I never would have done all the crazy things I did as a teenager, including having a baby at 16, giving her up for adoption. I was homeless for a while, also at the age of 15, 16, right in there. And I just thought every child deserves to know their greatness by the age of 12. And I was going to dedicate my life to finding the answer. So I dedicated myself to personal development. It took me 10 years of study and training and reading and working on myself just to get to a point where I could believe in myself. And when I did, I went top 10 in the world. And then when that company went under, I started a new company in Canada, went top 10 in the world again. But at home, now I was a mother. And this was 18 years after God gave me the dream, find a way to empower all kids by the age of 12. And my kids were not empowered at all. They were being labeled and diagnosed with ODD, ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And so here I was in my life, this transformational business leader and coach. And I was going home and crying in my bathroom because my kids had overtaken my house. Nothing the experts told me to do was working to create peace. And so I found myself just praying to God for an answer. I knew that something was off the mark. I knew that there had to be a way to empower the kids. I just didn't have the how until I met Thomas in 2011. And then through a magical series of events, he introduced me to a way to raise children that was empowering, that matched everything I ever learned in my journey of personal development, and it transformed our lives.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. Okay, Bonnie, I want to say thank you, for sharing your story with us today. And Your story is one of resilience and strength, honestly, because with there's a point you got to. I think the someone who isn't strong-willed would have actually just, quit, right? But you kept on going and you made sure you reached success. You made sure you achieved success. And that is why I'm particularly excited about our conversation because we get to learn from you. At least we know that no matter what you are going through in life, one can still get to where they want to be, right? No
Mm.
matter what, we wouldn't let your situation hold you back because you had things that could have actually held you back, but you refused to be held back, right? And I like that you mentioned your book, Think and Grow Rich, right? That is a book I genuinely would ask anyone out there to read. That's a book I would recommend by Napoleon Hill. Right. So thank you, Bernie. And yes, you became the first single female out of 16 million people to reach the highest position in your field. Wow. So what did that experience teach you, basically?
It taught me that perseverance is the name of the game. The one thing that I did get from my childhood was an extremely strong work ethic. And I really believe that deep inside my subconscious, I just wanted to prove to my mother that I could be a somebody. And so I just made a decision early in my life that I was going to win or I was going to die trying. And, I was the worst. Yeah, I was a top single female, but I was the worst entrepreneur in the history of the world for the first several years. But I heard this story, and it was the story of the bamboo tree. And it kept me going because when you plant a bamboo tree seed, you need to plant it 6 feet under the ground. And then you have to water that seed every single day for years before the seed ever breaks ground. But if you keep watering and you stay persistent and you keep focused on the end result, eventually it'll break ground and the bamboo tree grows 90 feet in something like 6 weeks. Like it's a miraculous thing to happen. And so I always pictured myself as the bamboo tree, but I thought it was going to be, the results. I thought the results was the bamboo tree, but the bamboo tree was actually me and my personal development is what I realized after a period of time. Because as soon as I believed in myself, I stepped into my power, and then the results just came. But the results and the money were the last of everything to come. So here's what I want to say: we already know this truth that champions aren't born; they are created. And when we look at great athletes like Tiger Woods, Wayne Gretzky, Steve Jobs, like none of them arrived in this world finished. Every single one of them was made. They practiced, they trained, they fell down, they got back up 10,000 times before the world ever called them great. So I just want to breathe life into anyone listening that has a dream, to just say, work on yourself every day, work on yourself as hard as you work on your business, to wake up every day and make a choice that you're going to push forward. And Napoleon Hill even says in Think and Grow Rich that persistence is to success what carbon is to steel. And so we must persist. We will have discouraging experiences. There will be tests that you must pass, but those are just tests. And so if you take everything and play the learn card, then you can grow and you can advance. And raising our children is no different. You see, we've been taught to punish our children. We've been taught to constantly correct them in the moment. We have been taught strategies like timeouts and takeaways and lectures and all of these things to try to get our kids to cooperate. But we're missing one thing. And the one thing that we're missing as parents is that our role is to prepare them for life, not to keep them compliant every day, like my mother tried to. Hmm. So we can either grow a champion or we can grow a child with a mental health disorder. They were not born that way. They were born perfect. And how we parent matters.
Okay. Right. Like you said, how we parent matters. And I would like to say thank you for those beautiful advice you gave to us earlier. And now we know we are talking about parenting, right? And one thing parents need to know is that um kids as children, right? Those are the formative years of a child's life, basically. So whatever
Yes.
they do to a kid will actually affect them even until old age, right? Because that those are the years where they actually form as a kid, right? So parenting is actually very important. And like you mentioned, there's this what we all know, right, as one of the parenting tools is, punishment, right? Especially here in Africa. I mean, where I'm from, it's one of the major parenting tools, punishment. So, first of all, why do punishments and behavior charts often fail?
We're operating with an idea that has been an untruth all along. The whole idea that children are born defiant and need to be punished into compliance is built on a doctrine that was incorrect. St. Augustine in the 4th century wrote a doctrine talking about the original sin. And because he saw a toddler have a meltdown, he said, well, because that toddler's crying must mean that they're sinful. And so the whole idea of constantly correcting in the moment with some sort of negative consequence is hurting our children, because how can we punish a child for something we've never taken the time to actually show them? And I want to give you an example because we all know authoritative parenting. We call it gentle, attached, peaceful, balanced, conscious parenting. Call it whatever you want. It's based on authoritative parenting, which Dr. Becky calls authoritative control. And let me ask you, if you knew a friend was in a controlling relationship, what would your advice be to your
Hmm.
friend?
To leave, actually.
And that's a global universal truth, isn't it? We would say get out of the relationship. But you see, our kids can't get out of the relationship. They come into a family counting on their mom and dad to show them the way, to show them how the world works. And instead, they're coming into a world where their parents are constantly telling them, no, don't. We can't do that. Don't run in the house. Don't hit your sister. But when we tell a child, stop, don't, you can't do that. With a little human being with no life skills and no idea how the world works, can they take don't hit your sister and know what to do?
Hmm.
The answer is absolutely not. So
Yeah.
how do we do it then? We go from being reactive, constantly correcting with negative consequences, to proactive. And we start to focus on what life skill does my child need? And I would write that down on a cue card, on a top of a piece of paper in a notebook today. What life skills does my child need? And every time they do something, they pull the cat's tail. The child needs to learn how to be gentle with the cat. Yes?
Right. Yes.
If the child is hitting a sibling because they want the toy, the child
Hmm.
needs the life skill on how to ask for the toy in a more successful way. But can we take a child and show them how to touch the cat gently one time and then they get it? Or do we need to show them how to touch the cat every day for an entire year before they develop that neural pathway? And we all know the answer to be true. We can become aware of something and then we must practice it again and again and again and again until we become a master at that skill. Are you with me?
Hmm. Yes, I am.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
if if you have a child with a behavior or even a mood disorder, let's say that they are quiet and cooperative, but they experience anxiety or depression. If there was only in the world two energies to exist, one was positive and one was negative, whether it be ADHD, ODD, DMDD, any other label, anxiety, depression, it's all negative. And
Hmm.
so that tells me that there's a negative seed planted inside that little child like was with me when I was a child. There was a negative seed that just said, I'm not worthy. It's not
Mm,
okay to be me. I'm always in trouble. I'm
mm,
always doing something wrong. And they begin to mask, they begin to put on this mask face of defiance to protect themselves. We call it fight or flight. I'm sure everybody who's ever worked with children has heard that, fight or flight. But the opposite of fight or flight is faith. And so
mm,
we got to start believing in our children. We got to start looking at our children as if they are these little tiny geniuses in a physical body who has no idea what it means to leave the door on time, what it means to
mm,
work a job to pay the bills, what it means to raise a family of four. They have no idea. But the one thing we are missing now is goal power. You see, negative consequences do not inspire a human being to act. The only thing that inspires a human being to act, it's called desire. And in
mm,
fact, Napoleon Hill writes a whole chapter on desire in Think and Grow Rich. Because unless you have a burning desire to achieve something you don't already have, you will not have the motivation to persevere. And don't our
mm,
children need the skill of perseverance, confidence, capability, work ethic, self control, responsibility, self discipline, focus, negotiation, probably 100 other virtues we'd love our children to have? And they don't learn it in a timeout. And they don't learn it when you take their cell phone away. All they
mm.
learn is they're wrong, they're bad, you're right. And now parent and child are in constant opposition.
Wow. Okay. All right. So yeah, thank you, Bonnie. I
You're
believe,
welcome.
parents out there are actually going to learn from this. And one thing, another thing is for parents to be able to, teach their children, right? They actually need to heal also. So, I would like to ask, how do parents heal themselves while helping their children?
You know, that's a journey. The first
Mm,
phase, when we work with clients, we call it the healing phase.
mm,
So if you've got a train going on the tracks at 150 miles an hour into negativity land, there's just no way, there's no quick fix there. There's no way to stop that train instantaneously. And even if we tried to stop a train instantaneously at 150 miles an hour, the train will derail. We're going to cause an accident. There's just no quick fix here. So the first month we work with our clients, we teach them to just take the foot off the pedal, right? Stop putting fuel in the fire. And when we learn that punishment, lectures, timeouts, takeaways, bribing, when we learn all of these are negative and we stop doing them and we just take a step back and we begin to think and grow rich in our mindset, think and grow rich in our relationship with our children. We first of all need to go, okay, we're going to go from behavior lens to an educational lens. That's the first
mm,
fix.
mm,
And then we begin to draw out, write out, visualize what a perfect day with our children would look like.
mm,
Because people without vision perish. And so every day is a hamster wheel. We're just getting tossed around by the waves, completely lost what to do, always reactionary. So if you just take a step back and you let some things slide, let the socks sit on the floor for a minute and put it down in your little detective book. Socks on the floor. What's your child asking for? Write that down. My child's goals, right? What are their
mm,
goals? They want to play with their friends. They want friends to come over. They want to play on the iPad. They want to play video games. Whatever it is that they're asking for, that's their internal motivator, their fuel, their desire. So we take a step back for an entire month and just breathe and play detective and begin to think and begin to write everything down. And then in weeks 4 or 5, we can start putting the plan together. So the only thing we can do is study and learn and grow and change. And change is never going to be easy. like renovating a kitchen or a bathroom, it's going to get messier before it gets better. So that's why people usually need a coach, which is me.
Exactly, and I highly recommend actually. I mean, you're literally the best, so anyone would reach out to you actually. So yes, and finally, I want us to touch on, helping young adults and future parents. That's what we've been talking about all along. But, you know, one thing is many people listening, they aren't parents yet because my podcast is for young adults. But
Oh, yeah.
what wisdom would you want them to, carry into the future?
Wow. Read every day, whether you feel like it,
Mm,
whether you like
um,
it or not.
mm,
Find not, and I'm not talking romance novels. You know, we're in the age of information. There's more information on how to create success out there than ever before in the history of mankind. Read a
mm,
book called Atomic Habits and learn how to change your habits
mm,
because our whole life is built on habits. And if we're in a comfort zone today, if we have fear-based mentality and we're scared to try things, that's a habit. And so the only way
mm,
to change that is to fill your mind with good content, faith building content, faith building audios, faith building books. Breathe life into yourself. Make a
mm,
decision. Picture what you want for your life in 20 or 30 years from now. And
mm,
then now we have a vision for where we're headed to. And wherever we are right now today is just the starting point. This is where you are. If it takes
mm,
2, 3, 4 years to develop new habits, so what? We have a lifetime to grow. And I'm just picturing my 21-year-old son right now. He just started a window washing business and they got to go door knocking to find clients. And it's
mm,
absolutely terrifying. And I can see sometimes fear stops him in his tracks, overthinking stops him in his tracks. Worried about what he's going to say at the door stops him in his tracks. But what keeps him moving forward is what he wants to create in 9 years from now by the time he's 30 years old. And we call that a goal. It's like,
mm,
what are the first two letters in the word goal? And we
mm.
know it's GO, which spells the word go.
Well,
And where are
well,
we going to go in life without a goal? And the answer is
mm,
nowhere. So set your goals and then come back to here's today and ask, what do I need to do today to better myself for my future self tomorrow? Reading, writing, meditating, visualizing, and then action. Fail. You're going to fail so many times before you ever achieve success, and that's okay. It's part of
mm,
the journey. So fail forward fast and make it pay.
feel forward fast. Wow. Okay, I would say this has been a deeply, deeply insightful conversation, honestly. And like you said, there is no goal there is no goal or there is no goal without a goal. Right? They come in handy. Both of them actually, they work hand in hand. So you need
Mm.
a goal, and for you to achieve your goal, you need to go, meaning you need to move, you need to get right on track and start acting. That is the only way you can achieve your goal. I'll say thank you, Bonnie, for this beautiful, amazing deeply insightful conversation we've had today. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. You could either answer with a word or a phrase starting now. So, what is one
What?
parenting lesson? Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, what is one parenting lesson everyone should know?
When we are, even whether you're a parent or a teacher or you're a leader, the one thing that we need to do is know that we are responsible. When we take
Mm,
personal responsibility for our life, for our teams, for our children, then we can always be in control of the outcome. And finally, just do something. Just do something every day. It's like
Mm,
you get on a bike, you can't steer unless you pedal. And so if you
mm,
just do something, you can always act, analyze, and adjust your
mm.
sails for tomorrow.
Let's do something. All right. So, what is a book that changed your life?
Besides Think and Grow Rich, oh my gosh, so many. um,
Well,
gosh, that you know what? The science of getting rich should actually be taught in
yeah.
elementary school or junior high school. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It you can read it in an hour and a half. It's absolutely life changing. Anything that you can read that directs your mindset to what you can do and anything that breathes life into who you are, because I gotta just say, you listening were born absolutely perfect with pure potential to be, do, and have anything that you would choose. So make a decision to go for it and don't let anyone's opinion stop you from achieving your deepest desires and your biggest goals. And I know that was more than what you asked for, but it just came out.
Right. It actually needed, actually, we needed to hear that. And finally, how do you define a champion?
How do you define a champion? Wow. That's real. I wish I had my book in front of me. I have it described in there. A
Oh, wow.
champion is somebody who wakes up every day, who works on their craft, and who becomes the absolute best version of themselves.
Hmm. Wakes up every day, work on a craft, and become the absolute best version of themselves. Wow. All right. So, yes, thank you, Bernie. I think that one touched me deeply, and I'm going to try to become a champion, actually. And I hope my listeners will do the same as well. So, yes, once again, thanks, Bonnie. And finally, before you go, where can listeners get to learn more about you and also connect with
Yeah, you can go to creatingchampionsforlife.com. That's my
you?
website. Everything is there. What we do, our philosophy, how to contact me, creatingchampionsforlife.com.
All right. And I'll put a link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. And to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this. And also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Bernie, and do have a beautiful day ahead of you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. Bye for
Just
now.
saying, actually, take care.
Okay.